where a creepy spider train is lurking in the dark. But the world around you might not be all that it seems. In today's video, we're taking a look at the hidden side of Choo Charles. From secrets out of bounds and behind locked doors, to showing off monsters you can't normally see. I love breaking games and showing off unseen things, so be sure to subscribe if this is your type of thing. As always, I like to do a quick recap of the flow of events that take place in the game I'll be covering. So once we leave the title screen, we see a daytime scene where Eugene, the man on the phone, is talking to us. We eventually row to the island of Aranirum, where Olympic sprinter Eugene guides us to our own personal train. We test out the weapon on board, and then depart on our hunt for Charles. However, things don't go as planned, and Choo Charles ambushes us, killing Eugene. At this point, we're on our own as we navigate this massive world. Our goal is to finish 4 primary quests. We need to upgrade our train as we navigate to 3 different mines to retrieve special eggs from within. We also need to plant explosives on the bridge on the north side of the island. Once this is done, we can summon Charles to the final showdown. This battle is fierce, but with careful weapon swapping and planning, the player can finally defeat this train monster. Okay, so we have quite a lot to cover in this open world game. So starting off, we're going to turn back the clock and go to the title screen. So this title screen normally shows you a fixed shot of the train, and as you select continue or quit the game, the train begins to move. However, what we see here is actually a map itself, so we can explore it. So if we look inside the train, it always has the giant double-barrel gun inside of it. Now, this train on the title screen will dynamically update with the appearance of your train in the game. However, regardless if you have the giant weapon or not, it will show up inside this train. So if we zoom out, we can see how big this map is and what it looks like from far away. It's this big square that's textured with grass, and there are these animated plants that blow in the wind that are scattered all around this map. But as we get near the edges of that texture, of that square, we can see that the texture itself becomes stretched, and that smearing effect causes the grass texture to be stretched out into these long stripes. But while we're out here, why don't we take a look at the moon? So up above us in the sky is the moon, and if we fly up to it, we'll see that the moon is very, very far away, but it's also very, very big. The moon itself is a transparent sprite, and if we go behind it, we can see just how far away we are from the map. Look at that tiny area down there. We are so far away. But now let's actually advance to the next scene, which is the opening cutscene when we start the game. So the opening cutscene has Eugene talking to us on the phone, and it takes place in the daytime on this dock. Now the camera normally swoops in near the building to the table so we can see a photo of Choo Charles on it. And then, once the conversation is done, we leave this map. But if we take a look at this map itself, it has plenty of secrets. For one, we see this man that's walking by the dock. But the second this man is off camera, they actually stop moving. They continue to walk, but they walk in place, and they don't move anymore. Of course, this is something the player never sees. But if we move around this island, we can see there's actually a lot to it. There's a forest behind this building, and it kind of goes on for quite a bit. But the building itself is kind of strange too, because it's actually not a building. It's basically a fake Hollywood set. So only the front of the building is there. Now, because the player never walks around this map, there is no point in having anything else. You might as well save on system resources and have half a building. But before moving on, here's a shot of Eugene up close on the phone. And from this point forward, we are now moved over to the cursed island. So we travel to the island by boat, and once we get there, we are supposed to go inside this train station. But unknown to some players is that this entire area that we're in is basically locked behind invisible walls. So if the player tried to leave this area before getting the train, well, they can't actually do that. There are invisible walls surrounding you, and you cannot get past them. Well, under normal circumstances. But as we proceed forward, Choo Charles will actually appear on the map and then attack Eugene. But something interesting is that a good amount of this event is scripted. So Charles will hunt you down, but the second Eugene dies, Charles will run away. And so, I wanted to follow Charles at this point. Now Charles is too fast, and the player would never keep up. However, if we take the camera, we can follow Charles over the countryside. And it turns out that he runs away over some hills, and then he unloads. But him unloading actually leads us to our next discovery. Underground, at the center of this map, is a giant rectangle. For the longest time while playing, I actually did not know what this was for. And the reason for this is because every time I went to check it out, it was empty. But it turns out this container is actually for Charles. So at the start of the game, if we take a peek inside this container, we'll see Charles within. And this is where they are stored when they are not on the map. Now the situation is not common because they're constantly roaming the open world, but at certain times, like the beginning of the game, they're within this. And I imagine the reason why he's in a solid container is so that he does not see the player through the ground. Let's move on to something equally terrifying though. So this world has many monsters besides Charles. For one, there's a lake monster. Lisbeth Murkwater is this witch that sends us on a fetch quest over to an island to basically get meat from a body. We have to swim across a lake to get there. And within this murky water is Barry, the swamp monster. Now, you can't see Barry at all because they are invisible beneath the surface of the water. But the only time they do appear is through an abstract jump scare. It's difficult to see the monster though. The camera has a filter applied to it that creates a sense of murky water. And if we remove this murky water filter, we can also get a good look at the monster. It has 4 eyes and appears to be a fish, but it actually has 2 legs and 2 arms. It's positioned like a fish, but it could also technically leave the water and walk on land. What I find most interesting is that the monster also has a second mouth hidden inside its torso. I'm not sure why this is there, but taking the camera inside shows it off. Now, this is not the